How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. This is like the third time I've tried to make this video. That's why it's so late. I've been trying or planning on doing one video for every episode, but I'm behind now because I've kept having issues with my camera. I think it was the way it was coding onto that particular memory card, so hopefully that's not an issue anymore, because if this doesn't work, I'm not doing another one. So if you're watching this right now, you are lucky that it worked, and I'm lucky, and maybe the problem's fixed. This video is about how prepping is super gay. Not really, but this not latest, I guess the third episode of The Last of Us is an interesting one for a couple reasons. First of all, like I said, the character in the episode is gay. That's not what makes the episode too weird, in my opinion. Apparently that was at least hinted at strongly in the game, if not said outright, so it's not like something new. What is weird is that this, there seems to be, just from like a movie show perspective, not from a prepping perspective, there seems to be a pretty big dichotomy between the people who are huge fans of the game and are like, oh, and just like creaming their pants about the show, and people who were not necessarily huge fans of the game or didn't ever play the game, like myself, who are just like, okay, you know, it's pretty unremarkable as a show so far. And one of the main reasons, I think, is the pacing, which isn't a problem. Like, I don't have to have like flashing lights and Transformer style, this goofy shit happening all the time to like a movie. In fact, usually the opposite. But pacing is a real thing, and something, you know, can be paced too slowly. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's just boring, but it can affect the overall, like, just vibe and enjoyment of the show, especially when you're forced to wait each week for one episode. So I think that the pacing so far probably wouldn't be nearly as much of an issue if this was something that you could sit down and watch 3 or 4 episodes at once or binge the entire season. But when you're forced to watch it in little blocks of a relatively slow-paced show that is not necessarily structured so that it to be watched every week. Like, I'm getting the sense that wasn't necessarily the way it was originally planned or filmed or written. So it's not necessarily structured well to have the right sort of structure for a weekly episodic, as opposed to just binging the whole thing. And this is only the third episode. Like, if it was such a strange decision, because obviously there's going to be spoilers again, but this episode, sort of, for the majority of it, at least full 2/3 of the episode, breaks away for a story for this, you know, secondary, maybe even tertiary character who ends up dying at the end. So it's not really going to be in the show anymore unless there's flashbacks. So it's really not, you know, super meaningful to the story or the overall story. And this entire episode, it's only the third episode, and we lose like the entire episode basically to do the side story, which, you know, it gives us a few little things during the story to tell you about the main characters or set some things up, but nothing major. Like, if you skip this episode completely, you really wouldn't be very in the dark about much. And so that way it would have made a lot more sense to have something like this, like a little vignette that just takes place in the same apocalypse, second, third season, maybe even much later in the first season. But we've barely had any setup and character development and stuff so far. So to have a whole episode taken away is kind of strange, but I'm rambling too long. So we're going to go into the prepping and survival lessons from this. And this one, interestingly enough, is pretty much about a prepper, almost exclusively. That character I was talking about, he is a prepper. And it starts with, at the beginning of the apocalypse, he's in his super bunker in his basement, which from the get-go we can tell he's probably has a decent amount of money. He's in a, looks like a mansion. It's like the Home Alone house, you know, like a 20-bedroom house somewhere outside of Boston. And he's in his basement when the federal government's going through and like force evacuating everyone because of this pandemic, which they don't know what it is yet. And previously in the episode, we've seen a setup that they had ended up killing people who wouldn't fit into the quarantine camps. They didn't let them go. They just slaughtered them so that they wouldn't have a chance to spread the virus/fungus. And so they set up already that he was, you know, in the right by not wanting to go with them. But he's a pretty typical prepper in terms of how the media would normally portray them. Full-on surveillance system, hiding out in his basement with a bunch of weapons. And it's always interesting to see what they get about preppers and what stands out to normies as what preppers are versus what the reality is. And none of that's negative to me. I would love to have a super basement with tons of weapons and surveillance system and everything. But he successfully like avoids detection by them, and even calls them like New World Order fucks as they're leaving, which is great. But then it shows him like go outside to like clear the area, which it makes it appear that he does that almost immediately after they leave. I would be down in my bunker for like at least a full 24 hours, maybe even more, just to make sure there were no stragglers, no security people posted up to do anything. But he comes out like pretty much immediately, and he's got like a gas mask bag on his leg, a sidearm, and he's wearing a gas mask, which is great. That'd be a great preparation to have. Obviously, someone that's squared away would certainly have something like that. He doesn't have any sort of body armor or ballistic vest or anything like that, which I think someone like that would have probably had. And the interesting choice to me, and this goes back to what I was saying about people probably not understanding preppers, or maybe this character is just supposed to be unique. I don't know. My focus is having issues. Is he's just using a pump action 12 gauge with the bandolier to like go out and potentially face a squadron or maybe even platoon sized element of military / government forces. So if you're going out in a situation where you know you're going to be facing other humans, specifically hostile humans, not animals, not the zombies, whatever, a 12 gauge shotgun is not going to be the best bet. It's not nearly as good against any sort of ballistic protection. Capacities obviously is abysmal compared to assault rifle that you can change magazines on really quickly, and rate of fire is nowhere near what you need it to be either. Range is not nearly as good, but that probably wouldn't be as big of an issue in that scenario. But I don't know why I had him show or have him use a 12 gauge in that scenario. And that's a recurring theme in this episode that I'm talking about. Obviously, so far, I'm already furious about this, and it doesn't get any better that people don't seem to recognize how important resources are, and they leave stuff behind and make poor choices about what to use, and that may be part of an attempt to adhere to the game, like slavishly, adhere to exactly what the game is, like what weapons people were shown with. I don't know, I never played the game, but weapon choice throughout this is very bizarre, especially considering it showed this amazing arsenal with at least a couple weapons that had quote high capacity magazines that were semi-automatic, what the people would call assault rifles, and they opt for bolt action rifles, shotguns and stuff, which is just why. So anyway, so it goes on to show that he clears the area, and then he goes about like setting up this massive like security system for his house. So he goes to like a Home Depot, which is a great idea, and it shows the power still being on. If they were at the point where, it depends, because they might have some skeleton crew staying behind at reactors, but you have to count on power going on very quickly in a massive shit-hit-the-fan event like this. And it seems to last at least days or not hours, but he goes to the Home Depot, which is great, or some sort of hardware store. I think it does show it as a Home Depot, yeah. And he just loads up on everything, which is very smart. We don't know exactly what he's doing yet, but he's loading up on like wire, materials, fencing, poles, some tools, and he still just has a shotgun and a sidearm with him. Not the best decision in my mind, but obviously collecting as many resources of any kind as possible, or not possible, is a great idea. Then he goes to what looks like a power plant, and it already shows him in like the next scene with bolt cutters, but he rams through a fence with his truck, which is just an incredibly bad idea, because he obviously has the ability to use bolt cutters, but he risks damaging his truck for no reason, that's just to get a cool shot for the movie. Not realistic at all. So he goes to a natural gas power plant, turns on the gas, which that might work for a little bit, whatever ambient pressure's in the system, but if the municipal power has already gone off, which they've shown, it's not going to last long. It would be much better if it showed him like collecting tanks or something along those lines, but it shows him turn on the gas after using his bolt cutters, which he didn't use when he rammed the fence. And so he's going to give him a little bit of gas. He's got a boat, which never really shows him use the boat. He kind of just uses it as a trailer. But he goes to like a wine store and gets a bunch of wine. And any of that stuff would obviously be a fantastic idea to collect. Food, liquor, tools, just literally anything in a situation like this. Manufacturing capacity is going to be non-existent. You might be one of the only living people in a humongous area. Any resources are going to be hugely important. So collecting resources, that's a good thing. You would definitely want to do that. Then it shows him go to an extremely large diesel generator in his like backyard. And it shows it just hooked up to like a gas can. And throughout the episode, this is kind of an issue where it shows him using an insane amounts of electricity. He pretty much has electricity for the 20 years of the apocalypse, which doesn't make any sense because the, first of all, diesel generator of that size, and he ends up setting up this massive electrical fence. And then he also is apparently powering with his massive diesel generator, which would take, you know, tens of thousands of gallons a year probably. And if you even had that, it wouldn't last for 20 years. So that's unrealistic. You would have to have like the amount of solar or something you would have to power something like that is unrealistic. But then it shows him, you know, go about his just being, he's got all these traps set up, which is cool. He sets up different sorts of like cannons and stuff along his fence line for the zombies. And so he's got like a full setup. He's got power, he's got security, he's got surveillance. He's apparently got weapons, even though he only seems to carry around shotguns and bolt-action rifles and doesn't have any sort of ballistic protection pretty much ever. But he sets up like a little compound, which is pretty badass. And then eventually some dude wanders up and falls in one of his traps. And luckily for him, the dude and the show, it's one of the non-fatal traps. It's just a hole in the ground that he hasn't put any sort of punji sticks or any sort of anything in the hole. So he traps this guy alive. And turns out the dude is, you know, not a bad dude, and they end up being totally gay for each other and living together for the 20 years of the apocalypse. And I was happy about the fact that they didn't make it that this guy was gonna like turn and take all his stuff, because he definitely had some OPSEC problems when he let this dude in and was like letting him take a shower, and then he went and took a shower, and apparently this like the guy could easily have like stolen everything or killed him or whatever. So that's kind of good that they don't always go that route, but it would have been not a good idea on his part that early on in knowing someone or after meeting them to put yourself in that much of a compromised position. But that doesn't end up being an issue for him. So then the rest of the episode is pretty much, you know, it's more about like the relationship between him and this dude than it is about preparedness specifically. But it would be much more beneficial to have more than one person, obviously, in any scenario, and the more the better in terms of security and stability. You have other issues that would crop up anytime you have any sort of community, but being by yourself is an incredibly vulnerable position. So all gay relationship aside, it would make sense to want to have more than one person, especially if it was someone you could trust. So, like I said, yeah, the rest of the episode is just them kind of more like a relationship story between the two. There's a couple preparedness related things that come up, and one was the new guy ends up contacting like the main characters, which we don't know it's them, through a radio without telling the prepper guy, which is a huge operational security breach, and he should have at least told him. I mean, I get that the whole dynamic is that he doesn't want to do anything. He's super paranoid. And there's even a funny line where he's like, you live in this fantasy world where the government are all Nazis. And he's like, the government are all Nazis. He's like, well, yeah, they are now. Because they're like literally the Fedra agents are these like super totalitarian regimes clamping down on the quarantine zones. So he breaks some operational security, but they have good... you know, the compound is set up pretty well. So they end up getting into a trading relationship, which is smart. He has tons of guns and things like that. So trading for things like seeds and other things that he doesn't have nearly as much of makes sense, you know. And then at one point, their compound is like attacked by raiders of some kind. And he doesn't really have like the new guy, I'll say, or the boyfriend wakes up just to the noise. And the prepper's already like out of bed. So he didn't wake him up, which is stupid. You'd want to have two people, you know, help. And he's just like standing in the middle of the road. Like he has all the security, electric fence, cameras, countermeasures like explosions and razor wire and everything. And like Claymore type mines. And he's just like standing out in the middle of the road where he's lit, not using cover, not even using concealment, with a bolt-action rifle engaging all this group of multiple assailants who of unknown number, at least 4 to 5, but maybe even more than that. So stupid to go through all that trouble, and he's just literally standing out in the road where these fires have all come on, and like so you can see him. He has perfect knowledge of this area, where the people would be hiding, and he chooses to stand in the middle of the road and use a bolt-action rifle. Absolutely stupid. In a situation like that, bolt-action rifles are good offensively for like sniping type capabilities, but defensively, terrible, because the capacity, the rate of fire, all that is much, much worse than with any sort of semi-automatic, quote, assault rifle. So that's what he would have wanted to use, and we know he has them because it shows some stuff. So that shows him on the wall at some point. So he actually gets shot. It's in a place in his body, you know, lower kind of stomach, abdomen area, where a ballistic vest or plate carrier probably wouldn't have covered anyway. But again, a guy who is obviously has a lot of money, has full surveillance system, has gas masks, it would have been stupid to not, and it is honestly kind of unrealistic that he didn't have any sort of more extensive tactical gear either, and didn't use it. That would be like, you would have to have like a QRF type get up, like a quick reaction kit that, like, bump in the night, you throw all this on, you have these specific sheltered positions set up based on where you see these guys coming from. It just doesn't make sense that his setup is this exhaustive, and then he does something so, you know, half-cocked and harebrained as to just go stand out in the middle of the street and shoot at people with a bolt-action rifle. But he survives the gunshot wound. Presumably he has, you know, medical supplies too as well, I would hope. And then it just kind of cuts to, like, very near the end of the apocalypse, like, or not near the end, but very near to where it's currently taking place, and the his boyfriend / husband, whatever, is like, has some kind of ailment. Doesn't say what it is. Obviously, you know, it's some kind of cancer or something like that, because he's so weak that he has to use a wheelchair, and obviously his time is drawing to a close, and he wants to kill himself, and the guy decides to do it at the same time with him. And honestly, you know, depending on your, like, moral, ethical, religious beliefs, I don't know what would be a better solution, you know what I mean? Because he would be back to being by himself as like a 75-year-old man or whatever at this point, and his preparations had pretty much worked as well as you could have ever hoped any apocalypse preps could ever be. It gave them a very comfortable, very modern style lifestyle that they didn't want for anything. Were very safe the vast majority of the time for 20 years, literally 2 decades of like the most extreme disaster scenario that can really be envisioned, minus like a planet-ending event or something like that. So, I mean, if that's the way to usually go out by taking a bunch of pills instead of dying on your own, like wasting away when there's no one there left, it's not necessarily a terrible decision, depending on, like I said, your value system. And then, so that we find out later that happened basically like a few months before the main character leaves with the girl to go on their adventure. And they go swing by his place first, and then continued trend of this type of show, and specifically this show, he has the opportunity, the guy leaves a note and says, take whatever you need from the bunker. They go down to the bunker, and it's obviously like super stocked survivalist bunker, and they leave with like a bolt action gun. It's, oh my god, it's so infuriating. It's a wall, you can see like what looks like an AK magazine. He's obviously got a bunch of semi-automatic handguns, Glocks and whatnot, and he just keeps like his revolver and a bolt action rifle, and he refuses to even let the girl have a gun, which is so stupid. She luckily like steals one. Or not steals, because they're allowed to take it, but she takes one surreptitiously and hides it in her bag, which is good, smart, good on her. She should have 14 guns in that bag, and he should be like, yeah, you're carrying these guns. Even if you're not going to let her use it, at least let her, or tell her she can't use it, at least let her take it. Give her an empty gun, because there's plenty of scenarios where you could have someone hold a gun on somebody, they don't know it's empty, and you could at least have the appearance of a larger force. But yeah, so that's foolish right there. If you're in an apocalypse like this, 14 years old, you're an adult or whatever, you gotta be another soldier. You gotta be another trigger puller, at least in an emergency. But yeah, he does a terrible choice of weapons. And also in the first episode, when I got super mad that he left his AR-15 behind us because they only had like a few rounds left, like he's got a six shooter basically. 2 or 3 more rounds is a massive force multiplier, and like I said, no one knows that you only have 2 or 3 rounds in it when you have a full-size mag on there. And now we know that he knew he was going to the ultimate prepper's location. He didn't think to hang on to the gun until then, at least, to see if the guy had maybe some super uncommon 5.56 ammo laying around. I guarantee you a guy that has this arsenal probably has enough cases of 5.56 to probably build another building out of, and you're just going to bury your gun because you only have a few rounds left in a complete 20 years into a complete zombie apocalypse. It's absurd. It makes me so angry. And it's like in the road, the guy's going around with like a bullet and is like, man, or he has 2 bullets and he's like, I gotta try and he's like, oh, so only has 2 bullets left, I'm gonna leave it. And like, what the fuck is going on? So that makes me infuriated, and that doesn't seem to be getting, that type of stuff doesn't seem to be getting any better as the show goes on. But they also managed to get the guy's truck, so they have a massive advantage now in terms of traveling, because they were trying to go to Wyoming from the East Coast, quite a bit of a drive, certainly a bit of a walk. So that gives them a massive force multiplier. But yeah, so that's pretty much the end of the video. Like I said, I don't care about like any. I think half the time they put this stuff in there, like the dude being gay. Obviously, that apparently was in the game, but it seems like they use that or amplify it or focus on it just so people can't complain about anything, and when they do, they can just say they're being bigoted. Because like I said, this was a very poor choice, I think, as far as pacing to put this it wasn't a bad episode. I liked the episode, fair enough, but it was a complete breakaway from an already questionable pacing show 2 episodes in, and it totally breaks away for like an entire episode. So now literally like a third of what we've seen so far at this point has been a breakaway that, you know, it doesn't really have that much to do with the story going forward, and it only gave us a few little tidbits of information that matter. So that was an interesting choice. Not happy about that per se, but I do like that it was like a prepper, and it's weird to see the things that they got wrong, or not wrong, but the weird choices that the character made that I don't think that necessarily a prepper, certainly not one of that magnitude, would do. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll be doing an episode on the next episode in a little bit too. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.